You're listening to a podcast by Change My Relationship, featuring licensed marriage and family therapist and author Carla Downing. These podcasts are designed to provide you with practical solutions based on biblical truths for all your relationships. Today, Carla will be interviewing a guest who has experienced a relationship problem and successfully worked through it.
Welcome to Change My Relationship podcast. We have with us today Laura, and I'm really excited because I'm hoping that this podcast will reach a lot of women that are in similar marriages to Laura's, and that they're going to hear her story and recognize that there is hope, learning just a few tools for them to be able to find their voices in their marriages. We've titled this, I Found My Voice After 60. Laura was actually 63 when she came to my classes, and she's going to tell you what it was like before she came to the class and then as she was learning to apply the principles and how she actually found her voice and how her marriage actually has changed, including how her husband has changed, even though we've not gotten her husband to come take any of our classes. So Laura, welcome to Change My Relationship.
Thanks, Carla. Thanks for having me come here to do this, and I hope that I can help women out there to find themselves in their marriage and improve it, because it can be done.
It can be done.
Yes.
Okay, so why don't you start off telling us, what was your early marriage like?
Well, it started out pretty good after the honeymoon. The honeymoon, I had planned to go to Hawaii, and I thought that's what our honeymoon trip was going to be. And at the last minute, my husband, who is from Italy, wanted to go there for our honeymoon. And so that's where we ended up going. And it was a bit of a challenge because, first of all, we flew into France, and I ended up getting a cold and a really bad sore throat. And he got frustrated with me because I was needing him to find some kind of medication at a train station, and he just didn't want it going like that. He wanted me to be fine, but that's the way it was. And eventually I got better. But it was a surprise to me that we were ending up going over to Italy, and he wanted to introduce me to his family. He's got lots of family over there. That's where he was born. And he took me to where his aunt, whom I love dearly, where his aunt lived, which is a very, very small town. And we were there for, I want to say at least a week or two. And everybody knows everybody because it's such a small place. So every time we went out, there was someone to introduce me to, and someone, that I couldn't communicate with. Back then, I didn't have a good enough handle on the language to communicate with them. So it was frustrating for me and boring, and I felt kind of sad. And it just wasn't what I was hoping for my honeymoon.
Yeah, and I think that would be a surprise for anybody to go, whoop, guess what? We're going to Italy to see my family instead of where were you planning to go?
Hawaii.
Oh, Hawaii. Oh,
yeah.
My gosh. I didn't hear you say that. Oh, I love Hawaii. Take me away from Hawaii. I wouldn't be happy.
Seriously. Beautiful over there.
So you got back, and what was the balance of power like in your marriage when you got back?
It was okay. Pretty good for a while. After 8 months of being married, we were able to get our own house. So there were a lot of things to do with that, working together and fixing it and making it ours. And then a couple of years after we were married, I unexpectedly got pregnant. We were going to wait a little bit longer, but so 2 years into it, then we got into raising children, and I began to see different things that I was not too keen about when it came to discipline. As they got older, we had different thoughts, different opinions. And like I say, he was from Italy, and in their country, they tend to let the kids do what they want.
Really?
They give in to them. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. They throw tantrums, they're going to give in. And that's not the way I was brought up at all. So that became somewhat of an issue. In general, we did well together, but like I say, the kids were a bit of a struggle, and he had his job and I was home with the kids. Fortunately, he was able to make enough money. We, had to make ends meet by eating hot dogs and beans and stuff like that, but it worked. And so my focus was on my kids. He didn't interact with them a lot, and so that was something that carried on through the years. He was not brought up that way. His family of origin was more like not affectionate. They did not express feelings. So that carried through, of course, into our raising of our children. The other big thing was in the way that I could not speak up. I was very codependent, and so I let him pretty much do what he wanted. He and his family would get together frequently. His family's larger than mine. They would get together and play cards frequently, and they would play into 12 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock sometimes in the morning, and here I am with the kids, and I would say, they have to go home, we need to go home and get them to bed. And he would say, yeah, they can go sleep on the couch, they'll be fine. So little things like that were difficult, and I just did not speak up. I would say what I would say, and then he'd be, yeah, it's okay, it's okay. And then I would just be quiet and wait.
Yeah, you
sit
would drop
and wait,
it.
be miserable. Yeah.
What was your parents' marriage like?
It was a little difficult to remember as I was looking at this question what it was like when I was little. I think maybe there was some affection between them back in the beginning. It was a good childhood. I mean, I knew my parents loved me, and we did things together. We went once a month, we'd go camping, and my dad used to play with us a lot, board games and so forth. Mom was she was the caregiver, and she would take us on different field trips and stuff. But as time went on, as we got older, I just noticed they were never really affectionate with each other. Mom came from New York, city town, moved with my dad over here to California into a small, a quieter town. She wasn't used to that. She didn't have her parents. They were back in New York. So I think she was unhappy for a good portion of her married life.
And what about the balance of power in their marriage? Was it like what your dad said? Was that the way things went? Did your mom speak up?
Mom was like her dad, a yeller.
Oh.
And she was passive aggressive.
Oh.
So she'd yell, and when she got pretty upset, she'd slam drawers or pots and pans around. That was how she dealt with something she didn't agree with or didn't like, wasn't happy about. Dad was more passive, and he would argue with her in the beginning, and as they got older, he would just not say anything most of the time, or he'd say, a few words and then back off and just let her be. He loved to read, so he spent a lot of time in his little corner of the living room in his chair reading books. He had his other hobbies, flying and teaching students flying. So he would just kind of disconnect from her because he knew there was really nothing he could do. She wasn't changing, and she didn't want to. And there was one in particular thing that I remember when we were teenagers, my sister and I. He quietly came to us and said, "I'm thinking about divorcing your mom."
Whoa.
Yeah, we were really surprised. And he basically was asking us what we thought and what we thought he should do. And of course, neither one of us wanted that. And so that's what we said. "Oh, no, we don't want you to do that. We don't want you to get divorced." And he didn't.
Wow.
He just kind of kept his lips shut when it came to her and survived it.
Yeah. So I asked that question is because often you can kind of get an understanding of maybe why you married somebody like you did from your parents' marriage, and also to get an idea why you responded the way that you did. And it sounds like even though it was your dad, you learned from your dad that you try a little bit and then you just give in. So, which is what your dad did with your mom, who was the one that was more difficult in the relationship. So when you came to my class, because fast forward lots of years, your kids grew up, your kids were adults, obviously, when you came. When you came to my class, what was your marriage like, and how were you feeling about your husband and your life at that time?
It was a very difficult time. I was still depressed from a depression that had started quite a few years before. I wasn't deep depression like I was earlier, but I was frustrated, I was sad, I was fearful, I was just unhappy.
And why was that?
Why was that? Because I guess I started feeling squashed and unloved and not valued. My opinions I didn't feel were valued, and I was resentful. Mm-hmm. I was just stuck resenting what he was doing, what he was saying, and how he would treat me. I just didn't know how to get out of that. And I used to think, how am I going to live like this for the rest of my life? Because in my head, I thought this is the way it's always going to be. There's no changing it. I always prayed that, God would change him, that God would do some kind of a work in him to make him understand how I was feeling. And I would come to you in the classes.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Many times. Crying,
yeah.
Often crying.
Yep.
And asking, if he said this to me, how should I respond? How am I going to handle that? What should I do?
Yeah, and you would relate to me a conversation. You would tell me what he said and what you tried to say, and then what he said over that, and you felt very talked over. And you said, nothing that I say to him matters. He doesn't listen. It's what he wants. It's what he says goes. And you really wanted him. It was painful. Like you said, you cried about it, and you were really sad, and you were really depressed, but resentful. I remember that too. And yes, and it kind of gets to a point where you've lived with it for so long. And especially I think as women turn after 50, we've raised our kids, we're thinking, now what? And we start to focus a little more on ourselves and thinking about who we are and what we want. And then it becomes, when the kids are no longer there, it becomes apparent even more so what problems we had in our marriage, especially if we feel like our husband isn't somebody that's safe, that we can enjoy being with and speaking our truth to. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I remember those conversations. What should I say? And I would give you examples of what you could say back at the very beginning, until one time, and we're going to tell those couple of stories later. We'll save that. Were you able to speak up in other relationships, like with your friends and your adult children?
No, that was a difficult area of my life. For most of my life, I would get talked over. I always felt like I was not, what I had to say was not important to other people. And so I could try to speak up and start talking, and many times somebody else would then interrupt or just talk over me as if I wasn't important. And I have done that. I have allowed that to happen up until maybe the last year, where now I will keep on talking. If I'm saying something and somebody tries to interrupt, and I will just keep right on talking.
Yay for you.
And yeah, I'm tired of that happening to me. Or I will say something, wait a minute, I wasn't done with my thought. I wasn't done talking.
Wow, an example of finding your voice.
Yes.
Not only in your marriage. Well, we got to explain how you did that. So that's wonderful. Honestly, I have to say, from who you were when you first came into my class and who you are now is night and day.
You think so, huh?
So different. And you're smiling, you're not depressed, you are confident, comfortable. I have to say, I'm jumping ahead here, but you facilitated a group for me in my class for like 3-4 years now, right? And at the beginning you were like, oh, I can't do that. And I said, yeah, you can. It's going to help you grow too. And women love you. You're doing a great job, but yes, such a difference. So, okay, so how did your beliefs about what the Bible says about submission and marriage contribute to you not having a voice?
Well, first of all, I'll tell you, I was born into Catholicism. I went to Catholic school. I went to church 6 days a week, but we didn't read the Bible. As most everybody knows, Catholics really back then didn't read the Bible. They're starting to now. But so I didn't have a lot of biblical background or biblical teaching. Mom and Dad did not read the Bible, but we had God in our family. We did talk about God, we prayed. So I'd say more of what I know comes from the way I was raised. Coming from an Italian family, the Italian men are usually, the woman to the Italian men are subservient. And so the man rules, the man controls, the man decides. And I had my grandparents living across the street from us. They moved over from New York. And so I saw a lot of interaction there of similar things in my parents' relationship. And so I have to say that I grew up with that sort of thing. You just do what your husband pretty much wants to do. You let them make the decisions. I would, if I spoke up, which I did sometimes, I would get flack. And if there was a disagreement, whatever, I would end up backing down and just being quiet. I would do I guess what you would call the silent treatment. I got to the point where it was easier just to be quiet, not say anything, out of fear, for one thing, because I didn't want to have to deal with anger. I didn't want to have to deal with resentment from him or disagreement in general. We weren't allowed to express anger in our family growing up. That was pretty much squashed.
Yeah, because it was passive aggressive on your mom's part, but outward anger is no.
Yeah. There's just not something we couldn't really express our feelings. I would go, when I would feel like crying, I would go behind the playhouse and go cry by myself. I didn't feel like I could express that in front of my parents.
Yeah, and what I remember having conversations with you when you first came in, you're saying, well, I think my husband's a narcissist. And I said, and you said, narcissists don't change. I said, I'm not sure that he has narcissistic personality disorder. Remember, you have to make that differentiation. I don't hear anything that makes me feel like it's that. He could just be remember I told you, I think he could just be a really strong personality. Maybe it's some of the background, that kind of thing. But I think you weren't sure that you said, I don't think we're going to get any change. But I said, I don't know, maybe we will. Let's just try doing these things and see what happens, because I don't believe does not have narcissistic personality disorder, and I don't think he's like I don't think he's necessarily abusive. He's not abusive and an abuser, but his tactics that he does are just the ones that, like you're talking about, they're just overbearing, kind of like used to having his own way, his last say. You can tell me if you disagree with me, but at this point, what do you think about that?
Well, in the beginning, yeah, we both were talking about narcissism, that he possibly had that trait. And after some time, you thought maybe he wasn't, those features were not full on narcissism.
Yeah.
And as far as abuse, no, there's never been verbal, or there's never been physical abuse. I would say verbal abuse in the sense of a lot of sarcasm. Sarcasm in our marriage was very common.
Oh, okay.
That's how he dealt with a lot of things. He's really toned down in that area. So it definitely has changed. My changing, which I never thought would happen.
Yeah.
Me changing, first of all, was a huge thing, not knowing I could actually do something about myself and stop looking at him to change. Has really, it threw the balance off, and it was difficult in the beginning because I would get feedback from him that wasn't too pleasant. I would get arguing, and I would get, say, threats in a sense that, not that he was going to leave, but in my head I was always worried that my speaking up was going to end up him wanting a divorce. So it's taken a long time. I've been doing this for 7 years.
Yep.
And it has taken a long time to get where I am today. But I'm telling you, I am so blessed. I'm blessed to have you. I'm blessed to have you teaching these classes and to have helped me so much to make me aware of really about life, about our personalities, about ourselves, about what God wants us to be.
Yeah, and it's just so exciting. It's fun watching. It was fun watching you grow and find your voice. it's just, I remember many conversations where you gave me examples, and I just absolutely love it. It thrills me to death. And so we now have to share with the listeners, what are some of the things you learned that helped you find your voice?
I think that, well, there are quite a few of them. First of all, I realize that in God's eyes, I am important, that He loves me, and He wants all that I can be to grow and change, to be that person that He created me to be.
And that's really important, because sometimes the church gives us these ideas, and they may not say it exactly, but it's kind of suggested, it's underneath, like that we lose ourselves for our faith, and that we deny ourselves and follow Christ. And if you don't lose your life, you won't find your life in the kingdom. And it kind of gives us that impression like God doesn't care about our personalities, and He doesn't care about who we are, and He wants us to just sort of lay down and let people walk all over us. And it's not true. And it has a really negative effect on how we live our lives. Like, oh, like I don't matter. I love that you're saying that you realize that God cares about you as a person.
Yeah, that brings me such joy. It has brought me a lot of joy. This whole learning process has brought me joy that I really never felt before. And I think the Bible, what we have learned is, like you're saying, that I think it's a misinterpretation of what the context of the Bible has. I think we misinterpret it. Sometimes things are taken out of context.
Yep.
Just like turning the other cheek.
Yes, totally.
That's okay in certain situations, but in others it doesn't really apply.
Exactly.
We can misinterpret that.
Okay, so that's the first thing. What else?
Okay, so the big one, this is a really big one for me, is to realize that I couldn't change my husband. The only person that I could do anything about, the only person I could change was myself. That took a long time, because I would bargain with God and saying, just please change him. Please change him. I can't live like this. So it was just very hard to do. But time healed it.
Well, and that might be confusing to people that are listening, because we've already let it slip that your husband has changed. So what we're talking about is you give up trying to force the other person to change, and instead focus on changing yourself. Now, as a result of that, it often changes like a dance. You take a step, the other person has to take a step in response. If you change your step, the other person has a different step to respond to. They're doing a different dance. So so that's what we're talking about, is that you give up your focus on trying to change that person or hope that person will change, and start changing yourself, which changes the momentum in a different direction, which is exactly what happened with you.
And I also began to recognize my own faults and my own weaknesses, because I have a lot of them. I can see where that all played into how I felt about our marriage, how I felt towards him. And realizing too that he has his weaknesses and his faults, just like I do. I'm no better than him in that sense.
So that drops some of the resentment, and then also taking responsibility for the fact that you were codependent, and you willingly stopped taking a stand or arguing for your own position, or saying it stronger. And so you recognized, part of this dance of not being able to speak up is because I let it happen.
Right. The problem lies with me. My responsibility.
Yeah, and that's really important, because, and that doesn't mean that we say that the other person isn't responsible for his part. He is responsible for his part, but you can't make him change his part. You can only focus on changing yours.
Right.
Yeah. So
and that was another thing I was going to say, is another big realization was, and a big freedom was realizing I'm not responsible for what he chooses to say or what he chooses to do. That's not my responsibility. That was so freeing. Really just concerned with my stuff, what my issues are. and just letting him do what he needs to do, but not feeling guilty if something's not going right, if he's upset about something. So,
and then that's
that is,
actually the detachment, is not feeling guilty about him being upset. Recognize, oh, well, if he wants to get mad because I spoke up, then let him be mad. So he's mad. So he chooses to be mad. Okay.
right.
I didn't
I'm
do
gonna
that.
Get over it. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So how
So
did
I'd
I'm
say-
sure you have detachment on your list of things that you learned.
Yes, I think that, yeah, that's it's a little bit further down,
Okay,
but
all
yes,
right.
detaching with love is definitely another big freedom. I have to say too that you have to kind of get out there little by little, testing the waters. You have to do a little bit at a time and expect to have setbacks. Or, you get a little bit ahead, a little step forward, but sometimes we fall back. But we get back up and we keep on trying.
Yeah, and at first you actually wanted me to give you the words of what to say in response to where
Yes.
it's like, how do I respond to that? And I would just give you normal things that you would say, like you would say to any person. And I remember one time saying to you, this is how people are. This is normal, is to just stand your ground, or to just say, wait, whatever comes into your mind, like there's no right, there's no wrong. It's just whatever comes, like I'm still talking, just like you gave that example before, like I haven't finished explaining this. Or I remember one time, this was natural, was one of the things at the beginning, kind of early on, you came back to me, remember when he was getting upset because you weren't responding to him and you were at the other end of the house?
Oh, yes.
And you yelled back to him something like,
Come in here if you want to talk to me. I cannot hear you.
Exactly. And he was getting aggravated with you. And you said before you would have left what you were doing. I don't know if you were putting on
Yeah.
makeup or something. You would have left what you were doing and you would have walked into the other room and said, what?
I would have
And
gone
then-
to him.
And you would have felt bad that he was upset that you couldn't hear him.
That's right.
And instead you realized, wait a minute, I'm here. You're talking to me from the other room.
You started the conversation. Please come in here to me if you want me to
Exactly.
hear. Yeah.
Which is
It's
like a boundary. It's also speaking up for your voice. And then I said to you, I remember, and this was years ago, I remember saying to you, that's it. That's your voice. Whatever comes naturally to you. Yeah, why wouldn't you say, I can't hear you. I'm in the other room. And it's as simple as that. And you were really excited. So
You do tend to get excited when you get these little moves ahead.
Yeah,
in
so
this
like
process.
you said, it was just a process of very slowly testing the waters. And there were times he got upset, but then you had to learn I needed to detach from him because it's not my responsibility
Yeah.
for me to worry about what.
Yeah, and it's scary, especially at first. It is scary because you don't quite know. Well, you kind of do know what's going to happen because you've been experiencing the same reactions. When I speak up, you get the kind of the same reaction. That's another thing, is that when you are going to start working on your stuff, working on changing you and getting your voice, you're going to have to kind of think ahead where you can anticipate the reaction, because pretty much most of us know if we say this or we do that, this is the kind of reaction we're going to get. So if you kind of think of that ahead and prepare yourself and maybe what you're going to say, and then think about trying to detach from it, that it's okay to detach, then that helps.
Yep, exactly. Very good. Anything else?
No, I think that was it on that one.
So that, I mean, and those were all slow learning that.
Very slow.
You take my class multiple times, and like we said at the beginning, it was very like slow in terms of trying out something. Sometimes he still talked over you, sometimes you talked down, but as you had those little victories of realizing, oh, he actually walked to the other end of the house to come talk to me, or didn't he on that day maybe say, oh, I'm sorry, like I didn't know you were in the back room, or something like that. He kind of backed down a little bit. And then,
I don't really remember,
You
but
don't
I know
remember.
no,
Yeah.
I don't remember if he did or not. But yeah, he understands that better now. So all I have to do if he does that again is remind him that I cannot hear you.
Yeah.
Can you come in here?
Yep, exactly. And then what was the time about was there something about the airport?
Yeah.
What was that story?
That was like one of the first times that I found my voice, and that had to do with tickets that I had purchased to go see our kids. I got airline tickets, and everything was arranged, and he got mad at me for something. I don't remember what it was, but he was angry, and so he told me to cancel the reservation. And I said, no, I'll let you do that. You can take care of that. And he said, oh, I don't know how to do it. And so I told him, go on the website. You'll see. You can go ahead in there and you can cancel them. So I left the room after I basically said those words, and I don't know if he got on the computer and did anything, if he tried or he just pretended, I don't know. But it got to the point where he came and he said, I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. And I just said, okay. And I left it at that. So what he was doing was basically threatening not to go with me. Mm-hmm. And I realized that. And then...
And what would you have done before?
I would have hopped right onto that computer and said, okay, you sure that's what you want to do? And I would have done it for him.
You would have canceled it for him.
I would have canceled it for him.
Even though you didn't want to cancel it?
No, but he probably would have stopped me.
Oh.
More than likely would have stopped me from doing it.
Yeah.
So the next day, without saying anything else about this, the next day he came to me and he said, oh, I wanted to know what luggage we're using to go on the trip. Mm-hmm. So...
And that was so that was his way of backing down and saying, but you know how you would see, you learned a lot of wisdom in the process of all this too, because you didn't go in and say, one of the things that we do when we're codependent is we get anxious. We get worried about what the other person is thinking and feeling toward us. So most likely like you said, you would have canceled it right away, or you would have gone in there and said, well, did you figure it out? Do I need to help you? Mm-hmm. Yep. Or you would have wondered, did he cancel it? And you would have been really nervous. Did you cancel the tickets? But you just thought, whatever, we'll see what happens. And you just let it all kind of fall on him.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was churning inside, but let me tell you. Okay. Oh, yeah. There was a lot of anxiety.
Okay.
I mean, I was making my first step basically into finding my voice. Mm. That was a big thing for me.
Yeah.
And it was not easy, but
But you didn't start nagging him or didn't question him of did you cancel him, did you cancel him? So
nope.
You just kind of let it go.
I said nothing.
Yeah, so the feelings, when we talk about the detachment at the beginning, you still have all the feelings inside and the fear, and yet you do, remember we talk about act as if you're detached, and you act as if you are just fine, perfectly fine with whatever, and then you
just go with that.
Yeah.
You go with that, and you just... try not to show what's going on inside. Try to stay calm and detached.
And then,
that anxiety it's there. I still get that sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. Well, I do too. Sometimes every once in a while, if there's something, my husband's not 100% able to always respond in the best way, or he'll, I sometimes still feel a little bit of anxiousness when I'm going to bring up certain topics. Mm-hmm. And so it's okay to acknowledge that and recognize, hey, if I was to go to, a lot of people I would be talking to about something that I might feel a little bit of anxiety about it, totally fine. But we do it anyway.
Yeah.
Because that's what the right thing is. And then there was something recent, I think it was about 6 months ago, you came into class and you said, I think I'm slipping back or something's going back or something like that. And you said, was he getting being kind of rough with you? And you said, I don't think I answered right, or something you thought you did wrong, and you were kind of down, and now I remember. At the very beginning, remember after you began to find your voice, when you were validated, you went through quite a period where you were angry.
Yes.
And what I remember recently, you came to me and you said, I'm feeling really angry at him again. I think I'm slipping back because something had happened that you were upset that he had said. And then you texted me after you got home from class that night and you said he apologized for getting upset with me on his own without me asking.
Yeah,
And
wonderful.
so-
It's just so wonderful. It just makes me so happy.
So that's a change, because you never would have gotten that before. And he literally did it on his own, realizing that he was kind of out of line in how he was responding. But let's talk about the anger, because that's really
Okay.
very common, that you recognize something, that you've felt guilty about something for a long time, you denied your own feelings, and then all of a sudden you're validated, then all that anger came in. For quite a while, maybe a year.
Yes. Oh, at least a year and a half, maybe.
Yeah, and you were just fuming all the time toward him.
Yeah, and he noticed. He noticed that I was angry. He noticed even before the anger came. I think he thought that I was just an angry person. He could see the anger, I guess, coming out. But I think that partly had something to do with me speaking up. So that was something that he had to deal with, because he wasn't used to me acting that way. The anger, I believe, looking back, comes from not being able to express anger when I was growing up. I was just, passive. I was quiet. I didn't speak up. And so that's what I knew all these years, all my life practically.
Yeah.
Living in fear, not liking anybody to be angry about me, angry with me or angry around me. I didn't like hearing arguments. So I think that anger is just something that got buried, because I really look back to my childhood and I don't remember being angry. So I think that all of these tools that you give us to work on ourselves finally got deep enough into me to really bring out that anger that was there all along, but I didn't know it.
Which was
I had no
it's
idea.
healthier to feel it, because
Yeah.
if it's repressed, then that's where things go underground and they become, passive. They either expressed in passive anger, but I don't think you even had access to any of your anger. I remember there was a time when you said to me, well, what if I can't feel anger? Because there's some of the questions in
Yes,
a
I
couple of
remember
our
that.
classes.
I think that was in small group that I
Yeah.
asked you that.
You said, what if I can't feel anger? Because I don't feel anger. And I
Right.
said, it's there. Just keep acknowledging that it's okay to feel anger. And then it came out in a storm. But you didn't stomp around and you weren't slamming cupboards, right? And you weren't screaming
No,
at
I
him.
did not
You were just
do that
feeling
kind of-
anger.
Yes, I was maybe a shorter fuse.
Yeah.
Shorter fuse with my husband. The patience, I've always been a patient person. I still am, I think. But that patience was, a lot shorter. Mm-hmm. That anger just came out a lot easier and a lot quicker.
And which isn't a bad thing. I mean, we're saying that you're allowed to feel irritated, you're allowed to feel anger, and especially if somebody's doing something to you that is discounting and talking over you or speaking to you in a harsh manner, or you're allowed to feel angry about that. Mm-hmm. You're allowed to let that person know that that isn't okay, and some of that isn't okay comes from the fact that if you feel anger over it, or you and then that lets you know, hey, that's not okay with me. If we don't feel the anger, how are we going to know that that's not okay? Mm-hmm.
Yes.
know?
With anger, with all of this stuff.
Yeah.
That's why that's why working on ourselves, it brings this stuff to the forefront, because it's stuff we don't even know we have. Those are the weaknesses and the areas of our lives that we're not aware of. For me, I feel like I had no clue about so many of these things.
Yeah.
You're just numb, I guess.
Exactly. And one of the things I say when we talk about feelings aren't sinful, feelings are things, they're information that lets you know that what's going on around you and how it affects you. Just like if I use that example of how you get scratched, like if I go out in the garden and I get scratched by a thorn on the rose bush, I know that I got scratched without looking at my arm because I feel it. And then I look down and I know, oh, blood. So, right, I know that I've gotten scratched. So it's the same thing. It's like, oh, somebody talks to you in a harsh way. You feel angry, or you feel insulted, or you feel annoyed, and that lets you know that, hey, that wasn't okay. So it's a good thing that you feel that anger, as long as you choose a way to express it that is not doing something wrong to the other person. But yeah,
Yes.
definitely. So
And it's also, well, I'll mention that later in here in one of the questions, I guess. I will go on to the next
yeah.
one.
So how has finding your voice, we've changed your marriage? We talked about that a little bit, but what do you have other things you want to add?
I think okay. I would say, like I said, not responsible for what others say and do. I think I mentioned that already. It's not wrong to want to feel valued and to speak your feelings, and speaking fewer words. I was one to lecture, especially with my kids, go on and on and on. And like you have said to us so many times, they just tune you out. So it's better to get your point across in just a fewer words and leave it at that. How a person acts and talks is not a reflection of me. Something else that I realized. I don't take that on. I don't need to take that on. Belongs to the other person. Sometimes words and actions are more to manipulate than being truthful.
Oh, yeah.
It's to get somebody else wants to get you to do what they want. They want to drive you to where they want you to go.
Good explanation. She used her hands like she was a steering wheel. If they want to drive you where they want you to go. In other words, emotional manipulation.
There you go. And sometimes I get feedback in the way of being blamed for something, and that I will speak up and say, well, I don't accept that. I don't accept those words. I don't accept the guilt you're trying to place on me.
Good for you.
So, yeah. And
how has it impacted your other relationships?
Well, I'm going to go back to that one just for a second.
Okay, go ahead.
And that is, I thought we were on number 7.
Oh, totally fine. Oh, you're still doing some
I
of the
just have
things
one
that
more
helped
thing
you.
I want to say
Okay.
that has been with me since I went into depression. Now that's like 30 some odd years ago. Really, really deep depression. And I opened my Bible. I just flipped it open and boom, it landed on Lamentations 3:22 and 23, which is God's compassion never fails. His
Yeah.
mercies are new every morning.
Yep.
And that has helped carry me through, because I used to think the way things were, the way I was feeling was cemented, and it was not ever going to change. It was stuck. I was stuck there forever. So that scripture really helped me, because I did begin to see, okay, tomorrow could be better. And oftentimes it was and is. So that's definitely
I
a
like
blessing.
that scripture too.
Yeah.
So now we've talked about what you learned that really helped you, and we talked about how your voice has changed your marriage.
Yeah, so what I really wanted to share is another joyful experience. I've had a couple of surgeries in the last month, and my husband has really stepped up to help me through this. He's been totally supportive, doing all the cooking, and just making sure that I don't lift anything too heavy that I'm not supposed to lift, and just loving me. And I feel so much closer to him through all of this. I feel actually things that I haven't felt for quite some time. I feel more love for him. I want to grow old with him. And I am just so thankful. Even though it's been kind of difficult with the surgery, this has been an eye-opener and something that has strengthened me and my outlook in our marriage and my outlook towards him, my feelings towards him.
Wow.
So it's a blessing.
And do you have anything to add on how it's impacted your other relationships? You've brought up some of the things.
Yes, with my children, I think that it has strengthened our relationship. I've always had a pretty good relationship with the kids. I've always interacted with them as they grew up. One in particular, my youngest daughter, she's a strong-willed child. So it was difficult raising her. Love her dearly. She is such a good kid. But our relationship has changed a lot because I backed off from trying to tell her what I think she should do or what she should say or how she should be. And she's recognized that change also. She says, we used to butt heads, but she says, we're friends now.
Oh.
So that's definitely been a blessing.
So you kind of did speak up with her, trying to get her to hear what you had to say, probably because of your being a mother, and you thought you had good advice for her. But when she didn't listen, you kept talking, you kept pushing.
Yes, I did. Her perspective on things is different than mine, and it took me a long time to realize that. I didn't know about Dr. Dobson when she was born. I wish I had, because I would have read his book earlier.
Well, I had a strong-willed child, and I read his book, and my strong-willed child was stronger, and it didn't work.
Oh dear.
So I don't know if it would have helped or not.
Yeah, it was quite a challenge. But I love my kids dearly. They're good kids. And I see when they give me birthday cards, Christmas cards, or whatever, their words are so sweet. And I know they love me, even though, for many years I used to think if I said this or said that, did that, then they were going to withdraw their love. So that was a thing in my head. It wasn't really true.
No.
But that's what I used to feel.
Oh, so that was probably from your childhood, that if you did the wrong thing, that you're going to lose love.
That very well could be, yeah. Because my mom was a controlling person. And again, she's Italian. Yeah, what's the word when, conditional love.
Yeah.
She had conditional love for me.
Yeah. And that carried over to your kids.
I
where
think
you
so.
actually thought that your kids, how
Yeah,
sweet
probably
now.
my marriage too.
How sweet that you can actually know that they love you, and that you're not going to
unconditionally.
lose that ever. Oh,
Yeah, and they're never going to lose my love for them either.
oh, what a blessing.
Yeah.
Oh, that warms my heart so much. Oh, she's smiling so big. You can't see her, but she is.
Yeah, I realize too, that's again, it's detaching with love. I realize that I don't have to fix them, and that I'm not responsible for their choices, and they still love me anyway. So,
Absolutely. Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Wonderful. Okay, so are you done with that one, or do you?
yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so
I'd say
I
it.
do want to comment that, okay, so we're talking, we talked a little bit about saying, I don't believe your husband is narcissistic, and this isn't abuse, so we're not, I believe there are a lot of marriages out there where, just like you, as a woman, you came in and you just felt really unheard and unloved, and I don't know if you feel, I don't know if you use the word unloved, but discounted, and you were unhappy. All of the above. You were unhappy. So I think there are a lot of women like that. I know there are a lot of women like that where these tools will definitely should get some change. And I teach these tools in my classes. For the Women Thriving in Difficult Marriages is the one specifically for the marriages, and Transforming Difficult Relationships, the one for all relationships. They teach the same principles, so either class works or both. And then you learned about your worth and truth in the mirror. And then we also, in the boundaries class, have learned how to even further developed how to set boundaries. So
And healing the wounds of your past.
Yep, and working
all
through.
of them
have worked together.
are worthwhile.
Yes.
Touching on different areas of your lives.
But for some of the women or men that are listening, and they're actually with somebody who has narcissistic personality disorder or high narcissistic traits or abuse, when you stand up to somebody who's narcissistic or somebody that's abusive, you get really strong pushback, and you could get, if you never do anything that puts you into a situation where you're not safe. And so you have to take the things that we're saying and apply them with wisdom into your own relationship, recognizing, if that will work for you or not work for you. And so just be careful when you're thinking about that, and know who you're dealing with, and also recognize that, there are some that have high narcissistic traits that are not going to change, and you can change, but you may not get the same kind of change that she got. And also there are abusers who, no matter what you do, the more you stand up, the stronger that they're going to try to control and push back, and it'll up and that's one of the ways if the abuse really increases.
Escalates.
You recognize, oh boy, this is something that is helping me realize this guy is really bent on controlling me and punishing me and pushing me down. So just use wisdom. But I think there are a lot of women that come into my class in your exact situation. If I ask them, how many of you think your husbands are narcissistic? Almost everyone raises their hand. Well, not everyone has narcissistic husbands. They might have husbands that are like yours, which feels narcissistic because it feels overwhelming. So that's where I feel like guaranteed in those relationships that there's a lot of hope for you getting change and also getting change in the relationship. What advice would you like to leave with people listening who haven't yet found their voices in their relationships?
Well, I got quite a few.
Go ahead.
I'd say prayer is the big one.
Okay.
Prayer is like number one for me. Starting out, you gotta ask God for help. You've gotta ask Him to guide you. You've gotta lean into Him, rely on Him, and get into the Bible, read Scripture, do devotionals. And Carla's got a really good devotional book that addresses these
Change
things.
My Relationship one, yeah.
Yes, that's very helpful.
Yep.
And then be aware of your feelings as they come up. You want to feel those feelings, as scary as they can be at times, and you want to then ask yourself, why am I feeling this? What's making me feel this? Where's it coming from? So that was something took me a while to figure out, because I'm used to busy, busy, busy. Let me clean the house. That was what I would resort to. Go clean the house when I was frustrated, anxious. And so that just squashes the feelings. But you need to think about them and you need to feel them. Another big one is to give yourself grace.
Yes.
I've had to give myself grace many, many times because it's not easy. But always remember that God is for you. And He will provide you with grace. Just
not
talk
beat
to
yourself
him.
up when you don't do it perfectly or when you...
Right, exactly. We're not perfect. We're not perfect human beings. We will make mistakes. We'll fall back. But that's okay. That's part of the growth. Again, yeah, we just said that. Understand we'll take a step forward and sometimes 2 steps back. But it's okay. You want to, again, prepare yourself with responses. As I said before, you want to think ahead to what you're going to say in that situation you're going to be in. That helps give you a bit of an edge sometimes on dealing with the situation. Expecting defensiveness and anger in the beginning sometimes when you begin to change. Journaling is a good way to help you get in touch with your feelings and maybe understand them more. I think that's something that I had started doing years ago, and that is a help also. Another big one is small groups. In each of these classes, we break into small groups, and that is such an important part of this whole learning process, because you begin to learn that you're not alone. There are so many other people out there in the same shoes that you're in, and to share that and to realize that is very supportive, and I love it. I have a wonderful group of friends now. They're not all continuing in the classes after they have been coming for a while, but we still get together. We just share. We've shared so much together. So small group is definitely something that you want to get into. Respect yourself as a child of God who loves every part of you. And then you want to seek out a friend, somebody who's safe, somebody who you can trust to share your difficult times with. When you're in a difficult time and you're just so frustrated or you're crying, it helps to share. You share where you're coming from. And focus on yourself, not on your husband or your other person that might be, driving you nuts. Focus on your own growth. And it's not your responsibility to please others. And then act as if you were saying, we want to act as if we are there. We want to act as if we have a voice, as if we are strong, as if we are confident. And it sounds weird to begin with. I know it did to me. I thought, how am I supposed to do that? I don't know how to do that. But it's something that we learn as we go along. So, yeah.
So there's hope, like we said.
Yeah.
There's definitely hope for changing yourself. 100%. I can
Yes.
guarantee that 100% that you can change yourself.
Yeah.
And how you respond.
And I'm so thankful to you because I've had a number of different counselors over the years. I've been in a Christian Adults in Recovery for codependency. I went through that for 2 years. It all helped in little ways, but nothing has helped as much as your classes have. giving us these actual tools that we can use, actual words. It's totally been a blessing.
Yeah, well, it's been fun to watch you. So, all right. Well, thank you for coming today
Thank you for having me, Carla.
and for being willing to speak up and share. And you found your voice with being able to do this too, which is another thing. If I would have asked you this 5 years ago, you would have said, no way. I can't do like you did the first time I asked you to give your
The
testimony.
testimony? Oh, that was horrible. Oh my gosh.
You were
That was tough.
nervous, and that was so
Totally.
hard. But you did great. Absolutely
Well, you know
great.
how to draw people out. You know how to get people to work on themselves,
Yeah.
to improve.
Well, it's been a blessing to watch you. So thank you again for
thank you.
coming.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for listening to this episode on Change My Relationship. I hope that this has helped you. And if you can think of someone you know who needs to find their voice, share this podcast with them and give them a chance to listen to it too. So thank you. We hope to see you in the future. God bless.
Thank you for listening to Change My Relationship. We hope you will subscribe to these podcasts and share them with your friends. Carla would love to hear from you. She welcomes ideas for future podcasts as well as your feedback on how the podcast have helped your life and relationships. You can email her at carla@changemyrelationship.com. For more information on Change My Relationship and Carla Downing's ministry, including her books, studies, devotionals, podcast, and YouTube videos, visit changemyrelationship.com.